There we go. We're live, Mark Plesha.
We're live.
All right, so I'm Andrew Knies. This is Mark Plesha. Welcome to our unannounced, unadvertised, Make It Happen podcast here in this real estate group of Northwest Indiana. We're trying to bring as much value as we can. What are we doing today, Mark?
I think we're going to talk about the stat that everyone hears all the time. 87% of agents fail in the first 5 years. We've never had an in-depth conversation about this. You've been in the business for 14 years, roughly.
Something like that.
Seen a lot of hundreds of agents come and go, come into the business, do well, succeed, struggle, fail, leave. Let's start there. What's the number one thing that you see where agents either succeed or going in that they're not going to make it?
Yeah. I think number one is the stat itself. If you're a broker owner and that is the stat, and the stat's the stat, we can't change that, right? Like we might be able to change it at our office and try to get a better success rate. But nationally, this is something that it's been consistent since I've been in the business. It's not going anywhere. So if you own a brokerage, you're going to build your brokerage model around that stat. So if you want to succeed and you want to do more transactions, more volume, which is how you boost revenue at a real estate brokerage, you got to take that stat into mind. And brokerages that are towards the top of the list, they also operate the largest schools, which means they know that they're going to get these agents licensed. They're going to do 4 or 5 transactions and they're going to fail out and nobody cares because there's another 300-400 agents coming through that school and getting licensed with the same brokerage that runs the school. And then, it's just 3 or 4 deals, which doesn't sound like it boosts revenue a lot for a brokerage, but you multiply that times hundreds of agents. And they're doing volume by, units sold or agents held essentially. So if every agent does 2 or 3 transactions, that's a lot of transactions times 100 agents. We're like, it's a lot easier for me. There's not a lot of staff here to operate a brokerage where we're focused on units sold per agent, right? And that's just not a common business model. What we're trying to do here is hard. It's not the quickest path to building revenue in a brokerage. So if the stat's the stat and you're running a business, like broker owners are essentially just adopting that business model because it works.
Sure.
I think the other thing that kind of lends to that is, people get into this business and a lot of times I hear like, hey, like, why did you pick real estate when I ask them? And a lot of them say like they love the unlimited potential of income, Mark. Like they can make as much money as they want. And then almost automatically right after that is like, I also want the freedom to make my own schedule. I want my summers off. I want to, hang out.
We don't want to work.
Yeah. I want to go out on the boat. We're going to Michigan on the weekend. We're traveling with the family all summer. The two things don't go hand in hand. Like if you talk to the agents that are like crushing it, no pun intended, with Donick downstairs, who this morning is like, dude, I'm working 14, 18-hour days.
Yeah.
Like those two things don't go hand in hand. So I call those agents, it's like the $1,200 business card agent. Like they spend $1,200, they get a business card with their broker's logo on it, and they're like, gets to tell all their friends they have a career. So that's number 2 reason. And then the number 3 reason, when you're a new agent, and this is like across the market, not just Northwest Indiana. I think this is, it just plagues our industry.
Mm-hmm.
You go and sign up with a brokerage. Their form of training is not the quickest path to a contract. They spend 60, 90, 120 days learning how to write a purchase agreement, learning how to host an open house, learning how to do a net sheet, learning how to open a lockbox, how to schedule showings and showing time. And there's another stat, and I don't know it, but like overwhelmingly the success rate goes way up if that agent writes a contract in their first 30 days.
Sure.
So like downstairs, Spring is sitting with Donick. Every time I walk downstairs, I'm like, Donick, excuse me. The other day she mentioned she has a buyer thinking about buying a house. Like, do we have them pre-approved yet, Donick? Like it's your buyer's agent. She got someone to raise their hand. We need to write a contract as soon as we can. So I think most brokerages would be like, oh, hold off on that buyer. You need to learn your contracts first.
Yeah.
Which is fine. They do need to know that. They need the confidence to be able to communicate it with their clients. But if you have the support, how long does it take you to write a purchase agreement, Mark?
now versus then.
Yeah.
Very different. But yeah, now it's, yeah, if I had that guidance,
Yeah. So if
20
you,
minutes
yeah,
at the most.
if you had a team member on your team or in your brokerage and they're like, hey, my cousin wants to write an offer. Will you help me? It takes us 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Knock out that deal. She's pumped. She got a commission check coming in. She helped her family member get into the house they want. Like that business model just kind of lends itself towards like, let's work on the paperwork and the busy work and the job of being a real estate agent. When the truth is like, you don't succeed if you don't know how to get business, and the front end training at a brokerage is all built around the busy work or the non-income producing activities. And then, dude, you quit your job, spend 60, 90, 120 days without a paycheck.
Yeah.
And then 120 days later, like finally you're confident to go get business. And then it takes you
Now you're 6 months in before you get paid.
maybe
Yeah.
before you get one under contract. Now you're 8 months before you're paid. Like that, I think that kind of lends to, you know, people get beat up in that first 6 months of their career in real estate.
Yeah. I think too, like the idea or the concept of delayed gratification, like doing that work for an extended period of time and not seeing the results,
Yeah.
that crushes people, and people don't want to do the hard work or the work that you have to do. They want to post on Facebook that I have whatever, they share someone else's listing, they get
Yeah.
a couple likes, like that makes you feel good. Oh, people are seeing these things, but
Yeah.
you're not getting business from that more than likely. So there is a delayed gratification there that you might have to wait a couple months from that work to plant that seed to where you're out making money from it.
I think that also kind of stems from these conversations aren't happening where successful real estate agents are really transparent about like what it takes to be successful in this business. So if there's an agent who's not in our office and, you know, they follow you on Facebook and like, well, Mark seems to be doing good. Like I know he's taking care of his family. The only thing they can see that you do to get business is what you post on Facebook,
Yeah.
which is not a lot.
No.
But you
No.
post stuff and maybe they think, oh, if I just do what Mark does, because that's the only thing they can see that you do,
Yeah.
like they'll succeed. So then they're like, well, social media is the way to do it. And I'm not knocking social media, but you do a hell of a lot more than post on social media to get your business.
Yeah. Oh, I'm horrible at even doing that.
I love that. So like the people that I've seen launch their careers and not, I mean, crush it right out of the gate, but they take a little time and they get going. It's people with strong whys. So agents who get in here and like they have to make an income, or the agent who comes in and it's like they're passionate about the industry. They really do want to make it happen, and then they got to be surrounded by people who are actually doing it, and surrounded with people with the right mindset. Which we'll talk more about mindset today. But then my favorite people that get into this industry, and one of our rookies downstairs is sitting there, is people who quit their job, who are the primary income earners in their family. Like they have no choice.
Yeah.
Sound familiar?
A little bit. That's a big leap to take.
Who's taking that leap, Mark?
Well, to some degree, me. Yes.
All right.
My wife was working, but she actually had anticipated quitting around the time that I made the jump into real estate.
What were you doing before real estate?
I was working construction 60 hours a week, on call, not fun with a young family.
Yeah.
So then actually almost 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, July 1st, I got licensed and made that jump back against the wall. I didn't burn the bridge, but there was no going back at
Yeah.
the same time. I could have, but not in my mind.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do it.
So then you start building your career up and building a sustainable income, which I know for a fact wasn't by posting on social media. You were back against the wall. You're calling FSBOs, you're calling expireds, you're getting those listings. Your first year, you did how much in sales?
So the first 6 months, I got licensed July 1st, 2020. That first 6 months, I closed 8 deals for $2.5 million. And then 2021, my first full year was a little over $6 million.
I like to hear that.
32 transactions.
And then so a rookie agent in the wrong environment, and you had a great mentor then. But
multiple,
Yeah.
multiple mentors that I bothered all the time.
if you're a rookie agent in the wrong environment, the idea of doing 6 million in your first full year of real estate, like people are going to tell you that's not possible, but it's possible right here in Northwest Indiana. Like you did it, and you're not the only agent to do it. Lots of agents do it.
Yeah.
so then you're building your career, and then Liz ultimately decides now's the time she quits her job.
Yeah.
And not only are you the primary income earner, you're the only income earner, and that provides you the life that you want. Your wife is helping raise the kids, helping you in your business still too. I know she's right there by your side, and she's a big fan and supporter of your success. But talk to us a little bit about that transition too, and how that came to.
Yeah, that was another leap of like back against the wall, but now backed really against the wall. And then you just kind of have to leave behind that agents don't want to do that action because they think they're, especially with SOI, like that's the big thing. And that was to my fault, even like I neglected that pretty early on. And that's why I called FSBOs and expireds.
Yeah.
Part of it was I knew not that many other people were doing it. So I thought that would be an easy intro, not an easy intro, but an intro. But then I think agents have that limiting belief of reaching out to their SOI and all of a sudden I'm bothering them.
Yeah.
And I think the moment we were backs against the wall and you have to make money, you kind of get rid of that thought and that limiting belief and like, okay, you can do it in a way to where you're helping people and doing it in a way where they're not in no way bothering them.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're adding value to their lives.
These are people that already care about you anyway.
Right. They want to see you succeed. For some reason, it's stuck in every agent's head that we're bothering them and they're never going to talk to us again, or we might run into them on the street and they're going to look at us weird. Like,
he keeps sending me postcards. I haven't really thought about this, but before I went full-time sales, I worked at a brokerage as staff, but I had my license and I kind of cut my teeth the same way you did yours. Like I called expired listings back then, real great listings expired, and I'd call them up on the phone and convince them why I was the better agent. I dialed for dollars Tuesdays and Thursday nights. When it came time, I was forced, but when it came time to go full-time sales, I had a decision to make, talking with Misty about it. She loved that, I had that salary job, and ultimately decided that going full-time sales was the best thing. And my mindset was like, I crushed it on the phones. Like every Tuesday, every Thursday, I booked a listing appointment in those 2 hours. Like if I could call 4 hours a week and now it's my full-time job and I could call 50, 60 hours a week,
yeah,
dude, I was getting rich. And then I hired a coach right out of the gate. Like I believe in coaching. I believe in the accountability. It's a big part of who we are as a brokerage here too. And my coach is like, dude, you're not going to do it. I'm like, what do you mean? No, I'm going to crush it, dude. 40, 60 hours a week, dialing for dollars. We're getting rich. And he's like, you might do really well, like for 6 months, dialing that many hours. And I believe you have the personality to actually do that, which is insane, but you're going to burn out. You're going to hate your job. You're definitely not going to end up marrying Misty. And he's like, you have to build a sustainable business, which is that sphere of influence based business. 90% of all home buyers and sellers knew their agent prior to the transaction. 80% of all home sellers only interview a single agent, which is usually the closest person in their sphere. 90% of all home buyers only interview one agent. You need to build a sustainable sphere of influence business. And I talk all the time, waiting is a 4-letter word, wait. I never want to wait. Building a sphere of influence farm was like completely the opposite of the way I wanted to build my business.
Yeah.
But you know what I did?
You built that SOI.
I had to make a living, dude. I built that SOI and I worked the crap out of that thing. And it worked out, dude. Those were like my 2 years of shut up and sell some houses, made a good living, supported our family, got us to where we needed to get to. And right now, like this time of year, it's like the summer shift. Like agents don't really realize that it happened, but like showings go down, listings sit a little longer. If I go to a showing or run into an agent out on Lincoln Way, that the same thing every time. They're like, hey, like, are you busy? I'm always like, heck yeah, we're busy.
Yeah.
We're crushing it over here. We're
Yeah.
all busy. And like, we are all busy, but it's not the same as spring market in the summer. Like our goal right now is sustain transactions going through, the summer months, because it's going to get busy again in the fall as it does in Northwest Indiana every year. Like it's our goal just to keep moving. But as I'm talking to these agents, they're not busy and they're freaking out. And we just had big policy changes in real estate and they're scared. And I start to like wonder, like, can we change the trajectory of those agents? And it's a big reason for this podcast is like, can we help these people, ultimately become successful? And there's an agent at another brokerage. I wanted to work here real bad. I'm not going to say her name. Been on her for gosh, a couple of years before she even got her license. I wanted her to work here, and she didn't choose to work with me. She went a different direction. Great person, into fitness, believes everything we believe, great for our culture. But she's at like a different season of her life. So young kids, she doesn't have the time or the want to be the $6, $7, $8 million producer. And then with like all the policy changes, her office is currently like freaking out. Like industry's going to hell. Like everything's gonna fail. Like burning down. Better get out now. She's like with not having the time to dedicate to my career and these changes happening in the industry. It's a scary time. She said it's the good time to put my license in referral.
Yeah.
And all I could think is like, oh no, like you don't have to be a $5 million producer in this season of your life, which like kind of brings me to like Madison Young in our office, who, dude, she just showed me like where she's at income for the year,
Mm-hmm.
crushing it.
Yeah.
And this is an agent that I got with me about 2 years ago now, who thought like if she could do $3 million or $4 million in business, like she was gonna make it.
Yeah.
Like help me get to 3.5 or $4 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I knew she was way better than that.
Yeah. What's she on pace for production wise now this year?
Oh, I don't know her volume,
Okay.
but it's a career year for her. But I do know where she's at income wise.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I want to disclose that publicly.
Right.
But
Right. Right.
it's awesome for her.
Yeah.
She's probably on pace to do 10 million, 12 million this year.
So tripling what her goal was.
Or more.
Yeah.
Quadrupling probably. But when I met Madison, you know, Elliot, her son, was younger. Like Madison's goal was to take the summers off.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we know that like summer's our social time. It's when we're talking to people. It's not often that someone says like on a Thursday, Andrew, I want to buy a house this weekend. Like,
Right.
We love when that happens. That's fun.
Those are
Usually
good
it's like
phone calls.
12 months beforehand. Hey, we're thinking about buying a house. And, you know, I find a lot of inspiration in my industry or in real estate through like other avenues. Like it's no secret, I'm a runner. So I watch a lot of running podcasts. This weekend is the Hard Rock 100. Like I'll be watching the live stream of a crazy race out in Colorado. But then there's another guy. He's like a bodybuilding guy. He's a hybrid athlete. His name's Nick Bear. I listen to all his podcasts too. And he recently talked about like how to build muscle, lose fat, and build endurance all at the same time, which is like you look like me typically if you're a runner, like skin and bones, but this dude's jacked. And like, how does he do it?
Yeah.
And one of the quotes he talks about is like, you make progress in drops, like water drops,
Mm-hmm.
like a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. The moment you get out of doing those like income producing things or the little things that like I know you and Jake are doing every day to like build your businesses, like you can lose progress in buckets. And then like with Madison, you know, they told her like, yeah, you could take the summer off and like, come back in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like she'd work fall until like the busy spring market. She starts making progress in the spring finally after working all fall into the spring, and like drop by drop, she's building a business, but then she stopped in the summer. Like I just had to coach her. Like, hey, I understand you want to be with your kid in the summer. You want to take them to the beach, go on vacations, and you want to be that super mom. And you could do that in this season of your life. But like if you want to like finish this season and come out and make some money in real estate, you can't stop in the summer. I don't mean you have to host open houses every weekend, show houses every night, like be in the office 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. But she just needed to make sure that her sphere of influence knew like, I'm Madison Young, I'm your go-to real estate agent. And maybe she had some hand raises during that season of her life that she didn't close. But everybody knew, hey, Madison's a great agent. She's probably the most professional agent in our office next to you or with you. Like you two are very calculated, very crafted, great agents to have here. And I love you guys for that. But she did that. And like now this year, when most agents are struggling and they're scared and like backs are up against the wall in a bad way, not like a way like, hey, I'm going to push through.
Yeah.
Like Madison's having a career year, man. And like, it can happen. Just remember, like progress happens in drops and you can lose it in buckets. So it just means like, you got to keep going. You got to do the small things, which we'll talk a lot about that.
Mm-hmm.
A big part about it is accountability. Like maybe you could tell me a little bit about what accountability looks like in your career.
Well, first, really quick, just go through some of those things that you coach Madison on in terms of actions, things that don't take significant amount of time, like being stuck at an open house for 3 hours on a Saturday.
Yep.
What are those things that she's doing, that she's implemented, that are making her stay in front of her SOI to be top of mind?
So first, I'll start with Madison told me she had no SOI because she's not from here.
That's fair. I did know that.
And then second of all, anytime I went anywhere with Madison in public, people are saying hi to her. So she did have a sphere. She just didn't realize it. So like the first time you meet Madison, she's wonderful. You're going to like her. So I had to get her to create that database. And kind of like you alluded to, like, I don't want to bother my family and friends
Mhm.
for business. Like it seemed like a pest. Like she felt the same way. Like, Madison, these people like you.
Mhm.
You don't have to ask them like, hey, who do you know that's going to buy or sell a house this week?
Super quick, because I was thinking about this
Yeah.
the other day, and that was perfect lead into it. When I first got licensed, I was huge into listening to podcasts. I was huge into watching YouTube videos of coaches and trainers. Once the one video, and I think the kids are still saying this, cringe. Is cringe still a thing?
Yeah, I think so.
This is the worst thing I've ever seen. And at the time, I'm like, I'm not doing this. If this is what people are training, it was a Keller Williams video.
Yeah.
No, not. I love Keller Williams. The brand's great.
$1 Million
Gary.
Agent is
Yeah.
the template.
Great. The video was an agent's. This was her script, calling her SOA. Hey, I'm reaching out to you. This is this is a business phone call only. I'm calling you to ask you, do you know anyone that's thinking about buying or selling?
Ugh.
And I'm like, man, like if this is what I gotta do to get business, maybe this isn't the right thing.
You're going to
for
keep
me.
dialing for dollars.
Yeah, right?
So she didn't think she had a sphere. Convinced her that she does. Keeping that ball in the air through summer when she wanted to have time with her son. Some of the very little things that she could do is like, we're big fans of a CMA once a year, every year. If you have an investment account with a bank, like that portfolio manager gives you a call every single year. And when you're our age, maybe you got 80 grand in that account, right?
Mhm.
But most people have more than 80 grand in equity in their home and nobody's talking to them about it. So
Yeah.
it's just like, Madison, position yourself as a professional who understands the market, giving these people home equity check-ins every year. And we've been doing that
Since
for-
I started here, before that,
before that. Yeah. When I was with Val, we were already doing that. We'd have CMA days and we'd all come in, sit at the conference room table and have a competition for who can get the most out. So that was part of it. And then we do monthly postcards. I think that, I used to teach a lot of technology classes at the board and how to generate Facebook leads and Instagram leads and, retargeting campaigns and sales funnels.
Mhm.
And like back then, dude, I would have like laughed at sending postcards. But like now I know it's 100% open rate. You put it in their inbox. It's not converting into a deal by the postcard, but it's letting Madison Sphere know like, hey, I'm here. I'm a real estate agent.
Yeah.
Every month, like clockwork, 12 times a year. They're like, oh yeah, Madison's an agent. So she just made those little shifts through the summer, and she didn't crush it in those summers, but she like kept herself out there. And now she's at a season where Elliot's old enough. He's able to like enjoy going on like listing appointments and showings and coming to the office with her. She came today and Elliot was upset that she dropped him off with her, a family member, and he wanted to come to the office. Like, she's at a different season of her life, kind of like that undisclosed agent I talked about earlier. Like she'll shift seasons to like where Madison's at today. And, Madison's crushing it.
Yeah.
But it was just those little things of like, posting more on social media helped too. She took that time to become really professional. So like the time that she spent, maybe it wasn't doing deals, but it was like crafting her listing appointment because, she isn't from here. So she does end up competing a lot more for listings than someone like myself who been here my entire life and people trust me and love me and they use me to sell their house. Like, so she had to get real good at her listing appointment, which I got really good at them too when I was working expires because you're always competing for those. She got really good at buyer consultations. So over a year ago, my brokerage coach, Judy, said, hey, this change is coming down the pipeline. Judy's connected across, the world and real estate really. And she's like, you better start prepping your team. Madison started doing buyer consults, 16, 18 months ago. And she's the #1 agent at converting on those. And when these policy changes happened, Madison didn't flinch.
Yeah, she wasn't freaking out.
Like she spent that time then like crafting her skills. So there's like things you could do in those seasons of your career so that when you're ready to turn it on, you're ready.
Yeah. You asked about accountability. I would speak on two things. Number one, our weekly sales calls. I've never probably told you this before, but I don't want to be the agent on there. And apparently, and I don't know that I knew this until last week, you're taking notes and then you're questioning us like, hey, did you do these things you said you were going to do?
Yeah.
I don't ever want to be that person. I think that's one of my, I don't like letting people down. I'm a
Yeah.
people pleaser. So I don't want you to be mad at me. Number one, that's the smaller side. But two, like, I think it's important to set we talk about goals and motivation, and I
Mhm.
agree that those things are good. Like setting standards for yourself to me are more important. Like I have a standard that I'm going to adhere to.
Yeah.
So if I tell myself I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. More often than not, I'm not perfect. I'm not Superman, but I'm going to do those things to the best of my ability.
There's an S under there. He's Superman.
But yeah, I think doing those two things.
Yeah. The accountability side, like number one, like I'm never gonna be mad at you, first of all.
No, I know, but in my head, I try to tell myself that you are
Yeah.
because
Well-
I'll trick myself. Like I'm not gonna let Andrew down. I'm not gonna let myself down.
So not only did we have the weekly Monday morning accountability calls, I don't know if you remember, but like when you came in 6 months late to switch into BrokerWorks.
It took
but
me a little bit of time.
You kind of stuck Jake.
He did it to himself.
We'll tell that story on another podcast. But I opened and I hope this is going to be a great success story. But I opened BrokerWorks at the perfect wrong time.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like gung ho. I built my little team. We're confident. Strutting our stuff. And then like as soon as Busy Market came, because we launched in January, as soon as Busy Market came, like interest rates skyrocket. Everyone's freaking out. Terrible time to be a real estate agent is what everyone thought. And like I had to make pivots as a brokerage. And one of those pivots is like most companies hosted in-person meetings. Like usually the first Tuesday of the month is standard in Northwest Indiana. Like we switched to weekly in-person meetings every single Wednesday, which I usually brought value and like quick training. But mainly it was just like, hey, what are we hearing in the market? How are we getting our buyers to still buy houses? Because all the stats are still there. The math is math. It's still a great time to buy a house. But Uncle Jim's telling them it's a terrible time to buy a house because the interest rates are high. So like we pivoted as a brokerage in office every single week, every Wednesday. We shifted now to twice a month. But then we brought in those Monday morning calls too. And those Monday morning calls are just, hey, like what wins did we have last week? What are we committed to doing this week to bring in new business? Because it's that income producing stuff. Like we can all talk about the new contracts and forms over and over and over. But at the end of the day, we need to know them. But knowing those contracts doesn't produce income.
Yeah.
If you're not looking for it. So that accountability,
No, you're good.
that accountability came in. And I'm only one guy. And I'm super proud that like now I have Misty on board. Misty's been a coach, not just in real estate, but she's been a coach her whole life, like coaching people to run marathons, 5Ks. And she is that accountability person. And having her to come in and help me with that and really help agents be accountable for the things that they want to achieve is going to be a big help here. So I'm doubling down on accountability.
Yeah. And to go back to the culture point too, and to speak on the accountability thing, like you've done a great job of building these. Like I love the Wednesday meetings and the Monday calls because we all get together and talk about things that we're doing to generate business, those income producing activities. I haven't been a part of a brokerage like that, but you hear about it where people are like, they're not going to talk about those things. Those are their secrets. There's no secrets. Like there's podcasts like this, things everywhere that people can go to and find these ideas. And we just sit around and we share them and we talk about the wins that we have, how we got the business. And they're things that brand new agents can just take and use and implement. And Misty's been great about sending out those ideas almost every day. Like, hey, these are things you could be doing today to get business.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome.
And they're easy to post too, which is great.
Yeah, they're templated. You just click a button, really.
I mean, that's all stuff that I want to do. I just don't have time. And then like, dude, Misty's someone who could chug out some work.
Yeah.
And she understands like revenue and agents need to make money and she's there for it. I think that, and Kathleen, we're thankful that you're watching. But yeah, we're going to keep sharing these. This sounds like it's hey, this is what BrokerWorks does to make money. and this isn't what the podcast is, and that's not the truth either. Like, this is what almost all agents are doing to make money. Like, if you take the top 500 real estate agents, BrokerWorks isn't doing anything that most of those agents aren't doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the difference is that, like, we have a high, deal per agent, like, ratio here at BrokerWorks Group, because we've surrounded ourselves and we've brought in the right people to really help grow each other. And we're all really, really willing to share.
Yeah.
So, like, what Donick is good at isn't what you're good at, which isn't what Madison's good at, which isn't what Kaylee's good at, which, by the way, Kaylee's in the top 10 this year. So high five to her.
Dude, that's nuts.
She's an animal. I love it. I've always been willing to share. So, like, my main business model, my main framework for success is what I call broker mastery. I've been teaching that at the board 2 to 3 times a year in the 30-hour post-licensing class for years. Like, the same thing I taught you, I teach at that class, and sometimes I bring more value to that class than I even bring when we host it here, because there I have to fill 6 hours. I usually do it in 3 hours here.
Yeah.
So, like, I bring value there, and I want to keep doing that here in this podcast. And I know that when it comes to prospecting and, like, bringing in high quality, like, quick to contract leads, like, you're one of the best in the market at that. So I look forward to hearing all about how the heck do you do 6 point whatever million in your first year of real estate. Like, you're going to be a wealth of knowledge for these agents. And then outside of these videos, if anyone reaches out, like, Mark and I are here, we're happy to help. Really, where this podcast goes, who knows, but we're here to help.
It's fun to talk about.
Yeah. We'll get Misty on here. She could teach you all about what she does. I'll try to bring in some of the other agents too. We want to bring as much value, but if you guys have questions, like, call me and Mark. We'll gladly help walk you through it. I have a lot of agents calling me now about the buyer agency stuff. It's like, I ran through SkySlope and I looked at every deal that we put under contract since July 1st. And on average, the buyer's agent is making more than they did before July 1st.
Yeah.
Like, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody's freaking out. Paperwork changed. That's it.
Yeah.
Now you get to dictate your income and make it.
Conversation change.
Yeah.
Right.
Conversation changed a little bit.
Yeah.
And some of those conversations are difficult. But we're happy to share any of that with you guys too, if you guys want help.
I think to touch on that too, like the dialogue, especially you and I talk about it a lot of, like, I don't like the word scripting anymore.
Hey,
I think
where's my Move to Highland shirt?
Oh, I have one in my car.
All right, good. I used a script to get that.
You did. But having those dialogues prepped and ready, even for all these changes coming in, but price reductions, even going through listing appointments, all of those things, being prepared, talking about being professional agents.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned, like, up front, maybe not spending, all of your time learning contracts, but you should be spending, like, we get paid a lot of money. You should know the contract that you're dealing with inside and out, in my opinion.
I agree.
Like, people don't want to take the time. I'll talk to agents, and I'm not throwing anyone on the bus, not naming names, but there's agents that have been licensed for years that they say things about the contract. I'm like,
it's not in there. It's not true.
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, come on. It's surprising.
There's, like, habits of how things have operated in the market, and they just think that's the legal
Yeah.
path that happens. Something fun that I used to do, Mark, which you should probably try, and you'll laugh about it. Ask an agent how many of them have read line for line a purchase agreement. Nobody.
Yeah.
Like, very few of us have taken the time to read contracts line for line.
Yeah.
Like, managing brokers do the best they can to, like, train their agents, but until an agent actually takes the time to read the contract and try to understand what it means, like, they'll never know.
Yeah.
Just fill in the blanks.
When you talked about prepping for these changes and buyer consults, and you and I are on the same page, and what I've always done with mostly my listing presentation is going through that listing contract, breaking down each paragraph into a sentence, explaining it to them, getting them on board. And that's how I show that I'm the professional, right? Same thing with these purchase agreements and buyer consults. Like, you should know that contract inside and out and be able to break down each paragraph into one sentence, explain it, and then in a succinct way roll that into these changes and explain, like, hey, this is how the old system operated. This is the new way of doing things. It does create more transparency in the marketplace, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think agents are freaking out that this is a huge negative, but I think there's a lot of good that'll come out of it. And I think people just need to adapt.
We might be the only office that is excited about it.
Yeah.
Everybody else has complained that I've talked to, but when I'm talking to you guys, like I'm smiling, dude.
Yeah.
Having a great time. This is going to be a good. You know, we could talk a little bit about that. We got some time. We were trying to go an hour. We're at 35 minutes. Let's talk a little bit about buyer agency and some
Yeah.
of our predictions. So, like when I was in our meeting last week, you know, I said that I thought strong agents were going to take on more buyers than they have before. And I thought that they would make more money per transaction before. And I thought that weak agents would represent less buyers and they would make less per transaction. So statistically, and I kind of mentioned it at the beginning, sellers interview more than one agent twice as often as buyers. So there's an entitlement in this industry where like you have to use your cousin
Mhm.
because it's free. Like, why would I not use cousin Sam?
Yeah.
Right? Like, can't convince Misty a good reason because it doesn't cost us anything. The seller pays it, right? Well, the buyer's been mortgaging the commission all along. Like that seller would have took, you know, X% less if they didn't have a buyer's agent to pay.
Mhm.
So like now it is transparent where if I'm not a real estate agent, I'm sitting down with cousin Sam and I'm like, hey, Sam, you're going to be our agent. He's like, you got to sign this form. And he's like, I'm going to make X%. And then Misty's looking at me like, hey, cousin Sam's a little bit of a degenerate. Does he need to make that much money? And I'm like, yeah, Sam, do you need to make that much money? And one of two things are going to happen. Misty's going to convince me that we're going to interview another agent,
Mhm.
which I think is going to happen more often now. Or Sam's going to fold because he's a weak agent
Yeah.
and he's going to do it for less.
He's a degenerate.
And a degenerate, crazy uncle or crazy cousin Sam. I don't have a cousin Sam, so good thing. So I think that strong agents will get some of those opportunities where they didn't have them before. It's never going to be more important to stay on top of your sphere. One of our slogans is never surrender. Like make sure you're able to present value to your sphere and they understand you're a good agent. I think that these first few months of buyer agency is going to be a little confusing. I think that some agents, maybe they're not going to like really hold true to getting that buyer agency agreement shown before or signed before showing a house. So when we tell someone like, hey, you got to sign this thing. I think tire kickers are a little later to the market. Like we've all had clients that will start looking at homes a year before they buy.
Mhm.
Like if we present them a buyer agency agreement, they might be a little more transparent about their timetable, which is fine. But I always want to have that conversation a year before someone buys. It's like the best time.
Yeah.
At least that's what I tell them. Thank God you contacted me this year to buy next year because we can get you set up to win. The market's not easy.
No. And there's a lot of education that needs to take place.
Yeah. I think that agents will become better buyer agents. So there's a huge crop of you, and I'm not knocking you at all, but the 2020 agents, they got into the industry and this was easy,
Mhm.
right? Like doing 4 million in 2020, like laughable.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, everybody did 4 million in 2020.
Mhm.
There was 19 offers on every single property. And I think,
You're a glorified door opener
yeah,
most of the time.
I was about to say, I think the standard of being a buyer's agent then was someone said, hey, are you a real estate agent? And you said, yeah. And they're like, great. And then you waited. And then they texted you an address and you're like, I'll schedule a showing in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You ran there, you opened the door and they're like, we like it. And like, great. We got to go $20,000 over ask.
Waive everything.
Waive everything. Got it accepted. Cash a check. Life was good. And like now it's just like we got to be good at our job again.
Yeah.
And I think buyer agency is going to kind of eliminate that. Here, sign this. You're not going to hear from me until you tell me you want to look at a house.
Yeah.
Like we're going to become better consultants. We're going to help people find houses. We're going to be communicating with our buyers way more often. Like last year, my advice to us agents here in our office was talk to your buyer every day.
Yeah.
Nothing new came to the market. Let them know nothing new came to the market today, but I'm out here. I'm your agent. I'm going to help you. I know that like this is a stressful time trying to find a home in this, hectic market. That's going to carry over. And I think all agents are going to have to be better,
Yeah, I agree.
better buyers agents. What about conversations with sellers? Because you've been talking to them already. How are they handling it?
I was prospecting FSBOs.
Yep.
Had
Well,
an
that's the
in-
worst one for this. They don't want to pay you, let alone a buyer's agent.
It was a weird, interesting email chain back and forth with this one, and just has absolutely zero expectations of any value from a real estate agent. All you need to do is hire an attorney. She used to live in Illinois. So it's just the email chain going back. I'm like, that's a really interesting way of thinking about it. And she's just trying to get her to open up more about why she thinks that way, so I can kind of get ahead of where she's going to counteract or to, handle her rejection essentially. And the big one was like, agents kill deals through negotiation. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, one of the biggest things that I think I bring to a transaction, and went into the stats, like for over the last 2 years, I've saved my clients $230,000, average like $13,000 a deal. And it's very rare that my deals fall apart.
Yeah.
And she followed up yesterday and was like, yeah, some attorneys will be quick to kill a deal. I've never had an issue like buying on my own, whatever. And it's just like, it's just interesting the different viewpoint that people have, and like navigating those conversations on the listing side. But yeah, very strongly, her viewpoint was agents are going to go away. They're going to either make less money or go away. They're not going to survive this market change. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting too, because these changes have been established in states for years now. And through talking to those people or some of those agents, nothing's changed.
Yeah.
Like the old system is still in place. It's just done differently.
I think if you look at the big picture of why the model worked where the sellers paid the commission, like I understand now, like that becoming a negotiation part, I think is A, a little more fun. Like I like negotiating.
Sure.
But B, more transparent. But why I think that it's going to continue to happen is home affordability in America has always been there because it's expensive to buy a house. It's hard for people to save up that first down payment. It's even difficult to have that down payment for the second house sometimes if they're moving too quick where they don't have enough equity for it. Where like these buyers are cash out of pocket a lot of money to buy a house and they can't afford representation. But you want a good agent on the other side representing the buyer and not just the seller.
Yeah.
And if you still want like home values to continue to be on the rise, like I think that if a buyer comes to your house and wants to put in an offer and they have a buyer's agent that they want you to pay as a seller, like you should pay that.
Yeah.
I think that that's going to be your best shot at getting the most money for your house is when a buyer comes with a great agent who, has value and is going to help that transaction close smooth, legally sound, and everything's going to be strong. I think I'm going to be more fearful when that buyer agency agreement comes in and they're only asking for 1% or 0.5% or something crazy or a flat fee. Like that's probably an agent who's going to muck up that transaction.
I agree. I also view that as that agent cannot negotiate, because if they can't negotiate their own paycheck to provide for their family, like we've been talking about, they can't negotiate for their seller or their buyer.
Yeah.
So you're going to, that's just you're going to kind of steamroll them in negotiations more than likely. But yes, the transaction might not go super smooth either.
Some of the conversations I had with agents are like, well, what happens when we're in multiple offers and we're asking for X% and somebody else comes in X% lower? Like as a listing agent, like that agent who's asking for more, I guarantee is the stronger agent. I guarantee it's going to be a better transaction.
Yeah.
I guarantee that buyer's more educated in the process. The inspections are going to go smoother. If there is a hiccup, that agent's going to know how to handle it. They're worth their weight in gold to me as a listing agent. Yeah. Like I want my seller to pay the good agent a good wage to bring a buyer for their house when they need to move.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I think there is a huge, knowing what I know now versus when I first got started, obviously it's a huge gap. And like, I just remember being a rookie agent and like the smallest thing going wrong in a deal, you freak out and you can't sleep for like 3 nights and you're like trying to scramble, calling people. Yeah. And now it's like, I had a streak of them this year, like 2 weeks where it was a disaster, like just crazy things happening out of my control. And they're just, all right, let's figure it out.
Get it to the closing table.
That's it.
Make some happy clients.
Yep.
There was another point I was going to make about the good agent thing. You distracted me, Mark.
Sorry, I apologize.
You're good. Other things with buyer agency. I wasn't thrilled. So, like, state law in Indiana demanded that we have buyer agency agreements signed July 1st. We're one of the only MLS boards to also remove the BAC on the same day, which, I argued about and thought was not a great idea. But I don't run for these boards. I don't help make these decisions. I don't have a big box to stand on. Just probably wasn't the decision I made. But right now in the month of July, this is where it's called like the summer shift. It's when things slow down just a little bit, and maybe it's a good time that we all experiment and figure this out when there's not 22 showings on a Saturday. Right? Like, it's a good month for us to dip our toe in the water of these new rules, and it's working out. Like I said, I looked at in our office, whether we have the listing or the buy side, on average, the buyer's agent's making more than they did prior to. I think as a strong agent, when we just had to accept whatever the BAC was in the MLS, like, that value's coming from an agent who may not be able to express value. So, like, it's a lot easier to negotiate my commission prior to the transaction than their own commission. I was getting 3-2'd a lot more often than ever before, because that agent's like, hey, I want to make more than 2.5%, but I can't convince my seller to pay me more than 5%. So I'll just lower the buyer's agent commission.
Yeah.
And we show those houses anyway, and we made happy clients and we sold it. But when I see that closing statement, it shows me 3-2. I'm like, oh man, dude, you're negotiating my commission on my behalf. That sucks. Now I get to negotiate my commission. That's exciting.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we always could do that, but now it's out of necessity. We have to. So it makes it easier, because it's already going to be difficult enough, I think, at times, depending on who the buyer is, of having this conversation. Yeah. Whereas before, it wasn't a state law. That makes it a little bit easier. Like, hey, we have to do this. Yeah. Or we should be doing it, I should say.
You have to.
No, you have to, but there's going to be agents.
Not you though.
Not
right?
me.
All right.
I'm just saying I will be doing it, but we're already hearing people are posting them. Whatever. Yeah, that's beside the point. But
some of the stories I'm hearing from other agents,
exactly.
like, I'm just gonna surprise my client with it at like the front door, like, hey, before we go and sign this, not go over anything with it. Like, thankfully, I'm training our agents, like, hey, go over these buyer agency agreements. Hopefully, we get to the point where a buyer appointment's like a listing appointment. Yeah, like, we bring them into the office. We go over a purchase agreement with them. Like, you want to create a great relationship with a buyer and have a smooth transaction. Go over that purchase agreement line by line and express to them, like, hey, these are the areas where I show value. We're going to help you on the purchase price. We're going to help you on the loan type. We're going to help you with seller concessions. We're going to help get that seller to pay our commission. We're going to help with the inspection negotiations. We're going to help if there's a problem with the appraisal. We're going to help you maybe get a home warranty if that's something that interests. Like, here's all the different areas that we get to negotiate on your behalf. And then here's what it's like to search for a home with me. And this is when you're going to hear from me. Like, your standard could be every day, or be like, hey, every Friday you're going to hear from me. Like, you get to set the relationship and the expectation in advance. And I hope that buyer agency agreement gets people to do that level of service for buyers like they do for their sellers. Like, this is all great stuff for me, man.
Yeah. No, Saturday brother-in-law referred me a buyer, lives in Illinois, an hour away. He's driving an hour to meet at the Highland office, and Saturday, that's what we're doing. We're sitting down and doing a full-on buyer's consult. I'm going to go over everything. I think as long as you frame it right and you can have that conversation, like, people freak out. How am I going to get someone to do that? Like, you can do it if you're intentional about doing it.
Mm-hmm. That buyer is going to be way more thankful for the service you provide if you explain it in advance.
Yeah.
I used to be in a bad habit of problems would pop up in transactions that I knew how to fix, and I would just fix them and nobody never knew there was a problem. But, like, if you explain, like, here's all the things that
could go wrong,
or this is all the areas of the contract that I'll be touching. And then when those things happen, they're like, Andrew said that might happen. Andrew knew how to handle it. We got to the closing table. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
Or before, I was just didn't show my value. I just did it. I knew that I had the value. I wasn't doing a good job expressing it. But if I had the opportunity to do a buyer consult with every buyer, like, I could show them these things.
And what's going to generate more referrals?
Great service when they understand what you've done for them.
Yep.
Referrals. That's a whole podcast.
That is a whole podcast. We
You-
got 10 minutes. No, I'm just kidding.
49, 52. I think I'm good. Mark, you good?
I'm good.
We're going to wrap this podcast up. I thank you guys for listening. Anyone who rewatches, give us a thumbs up, like it. We're going to try to do this every single week. We're committed. We may not be committed to noon when we started today. We want a little bit of flexibility in that. And in the future, we'll probably advertise when we're going to do these a little stronger
Yeah.
and the topic so that you know what's coming and what value we're going to bring that week. And I look forward to continuing this. If anybody wants to be on the podcast with me too, just reach out and Mark or I can sit with you and talk some business on that too.
Yeah. And even throw in some Q&A sessions every once in a while.
Some feedback and Q&A would be great. Like
Yeah.
we'd love to answer all your questions to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
All right. High five, Mark. We're out of here.